Hello, everybody. It is 3:35 p.m. Central Time on the 28th of October 2020. Yes, we are here on the Earthquake 3D live stream. It's Wednesday here in the United States, and we are here to talk about seismic events. So let's just start. Let's get a display capture turned on so you can see what I see. And for new viewers, let me just quickly explain the earthquakes that are raised high off the globe are deep down into the Earth. So the higher they are off the planet, the deeper they are down below the plates. We pay attention to where the deep earthquakes are because usually next to the deep earthquakes, within just a short period of time, a few days or less, we see shallower, larger earthquakes spread out from where the deep earthquakes occur. We have letter Ds to show us where we expect new deep earthquakes to strike. And we aren't let down. We have several new deep earthquakes, one right in the middle of the letter D here next to Fiji, and one right in the middle or just to the north of the letter D here in Japan, South Japan. That's where I'm going to start my update in Japan because we issued the warnings on the coast of Honshu. 4.7 and 4.8 both struck along with a deep 4.3, starting in Tokyo and going up to the north. You can add it together. It equals about a 5. The pinkish-colored earthquake struck the day before, but they're all about the same size, going up across Kamchatka, Russia, over to the east, over into Alaska, where we have a 5.5 down at 233 kilometers deep. And I'm going to show you on the plate boundary map here from the USGS where the deep 5.5 is. That's in the middle on the edge of the plate boundary to the north. The big circle here on the USGS map, and again, we'll go back over to mine, and you see it's right here. So we're going to expect a flow to go over into Alaska in the next few days that could go back up into the 6 range or greater. So a new deep earthquake hammering in on the underside of the plate here, new deep earthquake hammering in on the underside of the plate at Japan, and new deep earthquakes down here at Fiji. Next to Fiji, over at New Caledonia going into Vanuatu, 5.8 to 5.9 earthquake. Kiwis down here to the south, check it out. Your plate boundary got hit next to Kaikoura with a 5 or 4.9. On the western side of Zealandia, the new continent they discovered last year. Well, wait a second. They found another new continent called Resurrection. So I guess that's 2 new continents they found in the past couple years. Anyway, here you are. You have 2 of the same sized earthquakes, 4.7, 4.9, both sides of the plate boundary. And I'll show you on the USGS map here where the plate boundary is. Here's our 4.9 and the other 4.7 back here at the Tasman Sea. Okay, well, either side of the plate boundary, that's what's going on there. Then going all the way down on a fracture zone very far to the south, another 4.7. And that's on top of the other previous earthquakes that struck earlier this week right on our letter X, which was also a 5.5. So we're dealing with 5s, upper 5s, 5.8, 5.5, and then we go over to the west, and we have about the same size, 5.4 to 5.5. This is striking at western central Indonesia, right next to Malaysia, 5.5. As we go over to the far west, we have a 4.7 to 4.8. So it's like an even spread of the same sized activity, 5.5 and 4.7. And then all the way over here, 4.7 to 4.8. Here, 5.4 to 5.5, and 4.6 to 4.7. We could keep going. We could go all the way down and across over here, and we have another 4.8, and at the start of the week, we have another 5.1, 5.2, 5.3. Add it all together, it equals about a 5.5. It's all the same size going out across the planet in 2 directions, to the west and to the east of our hammering action that's coming in here at Fiji. Now, as we go further to the west, we have a 4.2 striking in western Nepal. We have to go back to the plate boundary map here. So we'll go to the USGS plate boundary map. And in western Nepal, this is where the 4.2 is. But over to the east, look at that. No activity reported in the past 2 days. We have to go back almost 4 days to get our last round of earthquakes, and that too was in the 5-ish range. That was in China. But wait a second. This is a 4.2. Where is it on the USGS map? While the Europeans are reporting it, they're saying you can get more information from the USGS on the earthquake. So let's just go over to their page and see where is this earthquake from today, 4.2. Over in Nepal, you'll notice they don't have it listed. but it just struck in the past several hours at 1834 UTC, so about 2 hours ago, this 4.2 struck on the plate boundary. And unless somebody says something, USGS won't carry it. That you just won't know that an earthquake struck there if you're checking their site. Pretty weird, huh? As we go to the west, got contacted from people who are expats from Iran. I guess they're living internationally, and they were keeping track of the areas in Iran that I had warned. Well, they contacted me, said, thank you for issuing the warning. I said, wow, hardly ever get contacted from people from Iran, you know what I mean? And so there it is, 5.0 came in right in the middle of the plate, right here next to the border region. Technically I was watching right here at the Afghanistan-Pakistan border, but that is certainly close enough, and there it is, it's a 5. Going across Europe and Turkey, 4.4 struck at the plate boundary over in eastern Turkey, and the USGS does have that earthquake marked. So they are carrying that quake, but you see where the red lines are, where the plate boundary is, that's where the new earthquake struck. Going over to the west even further, North Italy started to move finally. So first we had the activity up in Switzerland. Now we have activity right at Florence between Turin and Milan, right at the edge of the plate boundary, and it's in the low 3, but let me just show you where it struck. Right up here at the tip of the red line. The tip of the red line is the end of the plate boundary where it goes into the Swiss Alps, and of course the Swiss Alps started to move with mid-range 4 activity, and of course people are contacting me about CERN not being active right now. I know, I didn't say it was active, I just said it's where CERN is. So as we go over to the west, 4.2 striking in North Algeria, and we'll show that to you here. Look what's there. North Algeria. The other red line, the plate boundary that goes between Africa and South Europe, and it goes out all the way over here into the Azores, and lo and behold, tip of the arrow at the Azores, right at the tip of the red line, that's where our other 3.3 activity is. Okay, now let's jump all the way back over and go into Central and South America, where the predominant bulk of activity is in South America. Now remember what I said about 5.8, 5.9? Right here. Well, look what happened. A 5.8 to 5.9 earthquake, plus a cluster of other 5s, struck in Chile, going north to Peru, and south right along into the Arctic Circle, or Antarctic Circle. Going up to the north, it's about the same sized activity, 4.7 and 4.6. Gee, how many times are we going to say that in this update? We have the 4.7s and 4.8s, and again, here, South America, same thing. 5.8, they downgraded it, originally came in at 5.9. Stepping stone path of the same sized earthquakes. Going up to the north, 4.7, 4.6, off the coast of Colombia, and right in the middle of Ecuador. By the way, Ecuador, let's go look this up really quick. Let's see, let's turn off the latest earthquakes and go to the Volcanic Ash Advisory Center. And let me get a sip of my coffee. Look who's on the list. Pacaya. So Pacaya is up in Guatemala, but down at Reventador, there were some serious blasts taking place. So we have big blasts to the south here in Ecuador at Pacaya, also at Sanjay, but we also have Reventador here. I'm sorry, Pacaya is up to the north. Hold on. We have big blasts at Reventador and Sanjay, and then up to the north, Pacaya is right here, and it's just the new addition to the list. Let me show you what these two volcanoes have in common. We have to go to the plate boundary list to see this, though. Here. So in Ecuador, we have a spot where the plate branches off. Now, the USGS only has one part of this over on the western side. Out in the ocean, you can see all the plate boundaries come together right on the coast of Ecuador and Colombia. But you'll also see they don't have anything marked at all interior to the plate. Well, right there, you can see we have a giant arrow. I have that on there from the transfer zone, and the smaller arrows that go along the Andes Mountains. So there is a transfer point. You have to add in the plate boundaries here, and a spot at Ecuador that branches off and goes up across Colombia and over to Venezuela. And that's the spot, again, where our seismic activity and our volcanic activity is taking place. Now, what does that have in common with the volcano up to the north? Well, look. Look, guys. It's the same thing. It's just a little bit further to the north. Now, we have our arrows over on this side of the South American plate, but up here, the USGS has the plate boundary marked where it meets into the Pacific. So there's a transfer point there as well, and that's where our other two volcanoes are going. So we have two volcanoes technically going here. Okay, and that's, again, we've talked about that at length. And we have two going here. That's 4. And then down to the south, no eruptions across all of Chile. And that's a drop-off from where we were, which we also have Sabancaya erupting here in South Peru, but no new eruptive activity at all in South America. That's a drop-off from where we were. Oh, hold on one second, guys. Sorry. And again, I'm sneezing and coughing, but I'm not nearly as bad as I was the other day. We are the end of the allergy season. All of a sudden, it just got cold. Everything froze, and that's good news for me. But I'm still recovering. And don't worry, it's not the plague, guys. Okay. So here we are. We have 4.0 range activity off the coast of Mexico. We have 4.0 range activity right over here in between Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico. And we have upper 4, or mid-range 4, right here at the middle point between our two letter X's. And again, let me just make sure you can see this. So if you were to space these out, I'd say that that's equal spacing all the way across from Mexico over to Puerto Rico, all the way out to the middle of the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. Now look at the trajectory of the arrows. Now we watch this middle point between our X's, and I don't have an X there, but it gets hit almost regularly enough at this point that we might have to add our first add to the globe in years, which is to put an X, or maybe a yellow X, in between the two white X's, since it's getting hit so much recently. But why? Why is it getting hit? Well, energy is coming up, around, over, and the trajectory it's taking is in between the two X's. That's why it's getting hit. So the energy is coming from South America, it's coming from the Caribbean, and it's going over to the east. Speaking of the Caribbean, we've got a hurricane that's coming in down here, down to the south and South United States. That's Hurricane Zeta. Zeta. So Zeta is coming in, and that's getting ready to make landfall right about now. And that gets me into the United States. So let's just get back to Alaska really quick, where we have a deep earthquake hammering off on the underside of the plate up here to the north. Again, at the North Pacific, on the red line all the way up here at the north side of the Pacific plate, right where this is. So a push coming in on the underside of the plate, and we have a path that the energy normally takes that comes into the northwest United States. So a push up here equals activity coming into Alaska, which then goes down into the North American plate on the edge of the North American craton. Now, speaking of the edge of the North American craton, Texas. Guys, a 4.0 earthquake struck down here in Texas. They took it down to 3.9, but, I mean, we all know what 3.9 means, at least if you're a viewer of mine. It just means they're trying to pad the numbers a little bit. They can't have this many 4s going across the plate, especially when they've already reached their limit for the year. Oh, it's a long story on that if you're a new viewer. Let's go zoom in on the 4.0 earthquake, 3.9, and where it is, because there's something here at the location. First of all, we have drill points. Now you'll see these lakes, they fill these up with fresh water, and then they'll pull off the fresh water, mix it with chemicals, and inject it down into the ground. They'll do a process called fracking, or wastewater disposal, which breaks apart the shale and releases oil and gas. And this is a huge oil and gas field. And you can see the tanks and the pumps and the jacks and the pipelines. This is, of course, Texas. And right next to it, right next to the earthquake epicenter here, again, the pads are out here in the desert, but these are pretty sparse. But over here to the east, just a few miles, thousands of them side by side. Every pad is a different oil well. And we go on and on and on. And I'm not against oil and gas, but when you start to drill like this, it leads to perforations in the plate, especially when you're on the edge of the craton, which gets displaced by power transferring across the craton. Now there's also something else here at the location. As if that wasn't enough, where the earthquake epicenter is, well, we can zoom in down on the location, and right next to it, and I mean right next to it, we've got some very large power lines. If you want to call them that, we can call them high voltage lines. And they go into the area and out of the area to power most of these wells. So we've noticed, and not just me, many other people have noticed, that a lot of our earthquake activity is falling in a very close proximity to these high voltage power lines, which don't reside everywhere in the United States or around the world. Now, we have power lines all over the place, but high voltage power lines are a little different. They're the bigger kind, the monster poles with the 20 or 30 wires on a whole set that goes across a whole state. So that's just something we have to pay attention to. Let's go turn on our 0.0 and greater feed for today. This is the 24-hour feed. Well, we have to wait for it to populate here. There we go. Okay, so in 24 hours' time, you can see the earthquakes have gone across down to Texas with a 4.0 earthquake, up to the east by northeast, up into Oklahoma and Kansas, over to the New Madrid seismic zone again, and over to the east coast. Now, the spots that I already looked up, again in Oklahoma and over on the east coast, over at Sparta, right at the North Carolina border with Virginia, those are at power lines. Those are already in my other videos. I'm not going to waste our time to go look up more power lines just to have people tell me the power lines are all over the place when they're not. Again, the high voltage kind. But there is something else that took place here last night going into, well, last night basically. Let's go look at Google Earth and go down here to the east by southeast. Do you see all these orange dots? These are all hot spots that were detected last night. Now, they turned orange since they're over 24 hours old, or over 12 hours, I mean. But all of these locations, and when we zoomed in on the area, Tattoot saw this first. We couldn't believe it. It was just insane. But zooming in on the spots, it's just nothing but power lines going out from these locations. And you guys are welcome to verify on that. You can go to any one of these little pockets right here, and you will find these high voltage power lines that are at the location. And I mean, they're right next to it or right at it within a mile. And they spread out across the whole area. And look how big they are. Some kind of power thing going on. We don't know exactly what. Something to do with the power lines, showing as hotspots across areas where there's surging maybe taking place. And there's no doubt about it. Again, you can come in and verify this. Zoom in on the areas. Here, for instance, right here. Again, we have the high voltage power lines going through the area right there. And that's the spot that's showing Tattoot, my buddy who lives in Jacksonville, made note of the other areas that were getting hit with hotspots. And it was the swamps. He noticed the Okefenokee swamp up here getting hotspots in it. And I said, man, swamp gas. But that's what's going on here. I mean, these are hotspots, and when you zoom in on the spots, we have these high voltage power lines. By the way, the Tyndall Air Force Base is right here. The one that the Space Force is using and that Donald Trump mentioned and that the beam went down into a couple weeks ago. The shortwave beam went right down into the middle of where these hotspots are, which is the Air Force Base, which is the Space Force Air Force Base. Something worth mentioning. And then, of course, we have the storm coming in just off the shores here, which I probably should just pull up just for the sake of it. Let's go over to College of DuPage and just take a quick look and see what's going on down along the coast. So let's go in. Here we are. We're right along the coast of, there it is. There's the hurricane. Let's just look throughout the morning this morning. It's making a pretty quick track. Look how quick that is. The eye is almost to Louisiana right now. This is the most current frame right now. So landfall looks like it's going to be smack in the middle of Louisiana, going up to the east by northeast. It's going to go across Louisiana up into Mississippi. And let's just get another view on this from the south now. Here we're over Mississippi and Alabama with Louisiana down here at the bottom of the screen now. And the hurricane coming in, let's see if we can get an upper level water vapor on this. Yeah, there we go. Just super dense water vapor blowing up. Look at that. And it was right at a Category 2 the last time I checked. It had 5 miles an hour to go before it was going to reach a Category 3. Let's just go in and see what's going on with the storm, what category it is right now. I'm just using my local radar here. You might not even be able to access it if you're international, but just going to turn on my layers and just see, where are we? Yeah, we're currently at a Category 2 with max winds at 110, gust 115, direction north-northeast at 22 miles an hour. And as soon as it comes in on land, it'll take a step down to a Category 1, but it is going to be making a landfall at Category 2, which is pretty intense. Now, let's get back to the earthquakes. So, 4.0 earthquake striking on the edge of the Craton over in Texas. The rest of the earthquake's going to cross over to the New Madrid seismic zone and over to the east coast. Now, the west coast is where this energy is coming from. And looking at the west coast over the last 24 hours, the number of earthquakes has actually dropped off. The frequency has decreased, but the area covered by earthquakes has increased. Also, the magnitudes have slightly increased. While the area is spread out, it's gone up into the 2 range across the board. Now, you'll notice a few clusters of earthquakes, and we should probably get into the clusters up to the north before we get into the clusters down to the south. And we have to talk about the clusters down to the south in light of the giant fires that took place down in California. But really quick, we can just sum up the Northwest by this. The edge of the North American Craton in the Northwest, going down through Montana and into Yellowstone, going back up across up into Canada. Now, there's a few earthquakes up in here that actually I think are marked as quarry blasts. Let's just go see. Or an explosion. Okay, well, this is actually next to a quarry. We've looked up that location many times before, so we're not shocked to find out about an explosion at a quarry. Although they don't have it listed as a quarry blast, which is weird, because they can. So let's go look this one up. What about this one? Well, this one's another explosion. But wait a second, is this next to a quarry? We should look it up and go see. So I've got a meowing cat outside the door. Might have to go tend to the cat in a second. She starts doing this when she hears me talking. Yeah, I don't see a quarry here at all. I see some farms. And I don't see a quarry anywhere nearby. Wait, hold on, I stand corrected. There's a little itty-bitty quarry over here, over to the east. Pretty tiny. Maybe it's for a mine. They could be doing mining there. I wouldn't be surprised if they were. You know, there's a lot of mining up in the Northwest. So an explosion, though, not a quarry blast. And they can list, and do list, quarry blast. Now let's go over to the west and check this one out. This is a 0.0 earthquake at 9.4 kilometer depth. In other words, nothing happened down at 9.4 kilometers. Yeah, guys, nothing happened down there. Down where? Down below Mount Rainier. Oh. Nothing happened down there. USGS just checking in. Hey, guys, nothing happened down below Mount Rainier. Oh, man. Okay, so it's a nothing earthquake. It's a microquake. It's a little vibration as the plate is slightly shifting and the magma chamber, associated with Mount Rainier, of course, is slightly moving. Just slightly. Same with over at Yellowstone. The magma chamber for Yellowstone is slightly moving, just ever so little bit down below, about 10, 15 kilometers down, with all these small earthquakes. These small earthquakes right above the magma chamber, the center of it, for the deepest part of Yellowstone that comes up to the surface over here at Wyoming, at the park. Now down to the east by southeast, we have a few small earthquakes. Freedom, Idaho. Freedom, Idaho. Let's go put the coordinates in and go see what's there. I think I have a little story to tell about this place. Okay. Yeah, okay, we sure do have a little story to tell about this. So right down here, all of these small volcanoes, they go out in a line out into the lake here with Cinder Island. Again, that's a lava flow on that little island, but really this is part of the Blackfoot lava field. And Blackfoot lava field is just on the side of Yellowstone. So here's Yellowstone, and here's Jackson Hole, and the earthquake's coming in right on the edge. Pretty obvious. What about the 2.2 up to the north? Southern Idaho, a 1 kilometer depth. Again, Freedom, Idaho, same location. Do I need to look that up too? Now, down to the south by southwest. Oh, of course, there's a volcano there. I should talk about that for a second. Let's get another sip of my coffee. So Yellowstone is moving, and the lava field just southwest of Yellowstone is moving. We go back up here, and we have nothing happening below Mount Rainier. We have some explosions that are not Corey Blast, and we have a lone earthquake out here in the Puget Sound. What does it all tie to? It all ties to the northwest, to the edge of the craton, coming in from the northwest. So at this point, though, we have to go check and see if the plate is still shifting. The plate has been shifting for the last few weeks with hundreds of tremors per day. Little vibrations as the plate shifts. So here are our tremors for yesterday. Nothing. 0. I would say the system went down. Let's go back to the 26th. 41. Let's go back to the 25th. 230. Let's go back to the 24th. 108. Do you see how we're bouncing around between 100, 200, 40, 0? But it's been going on for weeks. It started to wind down, starting, I'd say, about the 20th. Let's go back to the 20th. Yeah, it got down to 170, and then it leveled off in the hundreds range. 134, then 237, then 206. Each one of these little red dots is a vibration as the plate is shifting. You see where we're centered, though. Washington, California, Oregon. Now we go back 2 weeks, and we were centered up here, next to Vancouver Island. So it shifted to the south, the shifting of the plate. And it's obvious it shifted to South Washington, it shifted down to California. And that's where we are as of yesterday, with 0. So wait a second, what if the system didn't go down? What if they're not having a technical outage, and it's really just no tremors at all? The plate goes from hundreds or thousands of them down to nothing. What do you think that would mean? It would mean that the slow slip stopped. But why? Why would the slow slip stop? Well, the spot that was slipping reached a resistance point. It didn't just waste all its energy. It's reached a spot where it's blocked. Blocked and locked. So as it gets blocked and locked, that cuts the flow coming out of the area. But at the same time it cuts the flow, it gives an opportunity for the area to the south and to the north to compensate. And we get what I call compensation movement that can happen on either side of an area that slips. So all this just slipped. Vancouver Island, Washington, Oregon, Northern California. All the tremors on land. Now there's 0. So either they turned it off, which is a false outage, and in which case this is a false alarm, if you will, from them. But for me, I have to watch. So if I see them completely stop, that means the energy is going to compensate to the south and to the north. We're going to see a break on both sides as the area compensates, because it's been shifting for the last 3 weeks. So what spot's going to compensate? Well, let's get into California, because look, like I said, the number of earthquakes has technically, I think, gone down a little bit, but the area covered by the earthquakes has spread out. It's obvious. You can see there's a pretty significant line of earthquakes going from geysers down across the Bay Area, fully engulfing the Bay Area, and then going down on the San Andreas. Now, they're all small. These are all microquakes, but the path they take, diagonal line, going from the volcano past the substation power lines right there at the Bay Area, and going down to the south onto the creeping section of the San Andreas, right next to Monterey Bay at Hollister, California. So I'm going to put the coordinates in at Hollister, and we're going to show it to you on the USGS plate boundary map here. So a line of quakes starting where the red dot is. That's a volcano, by the way. And there's electrical generation stations there at Geysers, Anderson Springs, Cobb, California. And we go in a line from there down to the east-southeast. So let me show that to you first. Here's Clear Lake Volcano, and if you pull the coordinates, they bring you into Anderson Springs, which is really here at Geyserville. And if you zoom in on any one of these little pads on the hillsides, you'll see geothermal turbines. And the turbines are all over the place here, and they're powered by steam, and it provides major electricity for the area. another spot where there's electrical generation and transmission of power, and we have a bunch of earthquakes right next to it. It goes down to the Bay Area where we are right next to another substation. But like I said, Hollister, what's there? Let's go put the coordinates in. Hollister, down on the San Andreas. Why are we stopping at Hollister? Why don't we carry on further? Well, it looks like we're at another quarry. Is this some kind of quarry blast? Hold on. Nope. 6.6 kilometer depth? Well, it's right below shooting range. Isn't that interesting? Below shooting range. Anything else here nearby? We have an airport. We have an airport right here. Is there anything else here nearby? I'm looking for power lines. You know, where there's an airport, we probably have some very large power coming in. Wait, we have an unnamed mine. Let's go see what's going on here. Yes, we do. We have an unnamed mine at the location. Okay, well, we have a mine. I don't know if it's going to be wise to mine the San Andreas. We have an airport right on it. But I'm more interested in the drill points down to here to the east by southeast that pick up in earnest. And we were right here at the frack wells just 2 days ago. So it's just a matter of miles, but at a mine now? The frack wells before, now a mine? So we start at a volcano, and we go down to a mine. What do the volcano and the mine have in common? Well, I would say that they have one thing alone in common. They have, well, cavities in the ground, down below at the surface where they come up. So the human mine has cavities down below, and the volcano has lava tubes down below. But both are going to be weak points in the crust. Whether it's punched in from up above, or Mother Nature comes hammering in from down below. Now, up to the north, there's a spread of earthquakes going in a circle around Lake Tahoe up to Pyramid Lake. Or, well, you could call that an oval shape. And if you played Connect the Dots around it, you would see there's actually something here in the middle that I've talked about for nearly 5 years. The earthquakes are going around this, right here at the border. So let me turn off the borders and labels, though, so you can get a better view on this. This giant oval shape, which is lined with volcanoes, geothermal fields on both sides, Steamboat Springs, electrical generation, going on right here, and that's where the earthquakes go down to. Then up to the north, they go up into Pyramid Lake, up here to the north. And let's show you what's at Pyramid Lake. We have, of course, volcanoes and a geothermal field. Those are fumaroles. We also have high voltage power lines going through right on this side of the lake. But, I mean, what are these? Oh yeah, large bunker facilities for ammunition storage. So this is a large ammo storage place, and of course we've got the power lines going into there as well. It's right next to it, just have to point that out. So the line of earthquakes goes around what I think this is a supervolcano, a caldera that has just not been identified by professionals. Over to the east, a lone 1.2 though. What's going on out at Lovelock, Nevada? 15 kilometer depth. Let's go see. Over at Lovelock. Looks like it's out in the middle of a salt flat. Is this some kind of explosion? Hold on. No, 15 kilometer depth. What is at this spot? What is this? Wow. A military training facility. Wow. Well, that's amazing. That's like one of these places where they'll go out and do some kind of... Well, they'll do some kind of training. It's like a village where they... Look at that. Or at least that's what it looks like. These look like shipping containers, maybe. That's got to be what it is. It's got to be what it is. What do we have here? Oh, yeah. Certainly it's military. Certainly we have military there. All right. Oh, look at the tank. There we go. Got a tank with the turret on it. Look at that. Wow. Tank training range, maybe? Soda Lakes Volcanic Center is the location, though. But if I get an earthquake out there at a tank training range, but it's 15-kilometer depth, maybe it's VLF. Let's go down to the south, shall we? Let's go to the California-Nevada border. So there's a confirmed supervolcano on the California side of the border. 100% about that. There's 1,000 cubic kilometers melt down below Long Valley Caldera. Yes, looks like I got a delivery here. Wonderful. They might ring the doorbell. Maybe not. Okay. Long Valley Caldera right here. This is 1,000 cubic kilometers of melt down below it, and we have earthquakes right in the middle of it. But wait a second. Guess what else is right in the middle of it? Power generation. Geothermal turbines. Electrical. Again, right there in the middle, right next to where the earthquakes are. Again, this is something new that I've started to pay attention to that I did not pay attention to before. I didn't bother to look around here to see if there is electrical generation going on there where the tank training range is. I mean, there is something there, but we could spend all day looking these up. I just have to point out that there's too many of them for it to be chance. So electrical generation where these three earthquakes are. Then we go right across the border, right here in the middle. There's a 2.4 at Bodie, California. This is taking us in next to Aurora Bodie Crater. But maybe there's something else there. Is there electrical generation around here? Again, I just got to look. There might not be. Or transmission. High voltage transmission lines. I don't see any, though. You know, people try to tell me that power lines are everywhere. Well, this is a case where there isn't any power lines aren't everywhere. Look, there aren't any power lines there. People try to say they are. Okay, so we go across there and over to the east, and this cluster of earthquakes makes a line pretty much west to east, east to west. It's on the back end of our arrow. And look what's out at the front end of our arrow. Well, we have an earthquake right in the middle of it. You also can go down to the south, which is very interesting, next to Dutchman's Draw volcano. But all these tie together back over to this, which is Monte Cristo Hills Volcanic Buttes. It had a 6.5 earthquake and a surface fissure fracture that formed in the same direction these earthquakes are still taking. It broke at the surface. And then the energy transferred over to the east. But anyway, this earthquake struck 4 months ago, 5 months ago almost, and it was significant. It was 6.5. And it shook up the whole area. It's still broken, and it still catches the energy as energy comes down from the northwest. Just like on the San Andreas. It goes from volcano right down here to a mine. Well, up here, it goes from a supervolcano down here to another supervolcano and a fracture point in a volcanic field called Monte Cristo Hills. Let me show it to you. Here's Monte Cristo Hills Volcanic Center. So it comes down to here and gets caught up. Goes over to the east, tries to at least, and that's what it's doing now, small earthquakes going over to the east. Now, let's go down further into Nevada and Southern California, where we have two lines of earthquakes now. This is in Southern California at Owens Valley and east of Owens Valley. I think that's Death Valley, isn't it? I think it is. Let's go see. Panamint Valley. This is where they fly. Oh, no, here's Death Valley just to the east. Death Valley is the next valley over. Okay. Well, again, I think this is where they fly through with all the high-tech fighters and do all kinds of canyon testing in here. I just have to go look it up and see what's there. So we'll pull the coordinates on this. North of Searles Valley. And we'll put them in on Google Earth. Always important to look these up, guys. So it's a new line of earthquakes across this valley, going northwest to southeast. What's this? A road. Okay. Got a road there. No power lines. Again, for people who are trying to tell me that power lines are everywhere, there's another spot where there aren't any, at least none that I can see. Hold on, let's go make... Before I say there aren't any. Are there any along the road? No, there's none along the road. And there's none to the west or the east as far as I can see. This is just natural features. It's the middle of the desert. Oh, wait. What's this? This must be one of those airports where they're launching from to do the special tests on the aircraft. Look at that. That's like a brand new Airstrip of some kind. Okay, well, that is just very interesting. We are just to the east of it, going from northwest to southeast. And another line of quakes going northwest to southeast. From here down to here. And up here is where we start at a power generation station called Kozo Volcanic Field. So Kozo Volcanic Field itself is a volcanic field, of course. Humans drilled into it and placed these geothermal turbines all over the place to generate electricity. That's where we start with the earthquakes. And then they go down to the south, and we end into a radar range, a directed energy weapon test range for lasers and microwaves, down here just to the east by southeast of the lava mountains. And it's right out in here. Okay, and that's a test facility for like Boeing and Raytheon, and they've got all these experimental facilities out here at China Lake. Once we go out to the east by southeast, we get out into the Mojave Desert, and let's just pull the coordinates on a few of these. So the 2.4, Ludlow, California. This brings us into a set of high voltage power lines stretching across the desert, which is just wild if you think about it. Here we are. Earthquake swarm, and here's our high voltage power lines going through the desert. And these are not everywhere. There's only like 3 sets across pretty much the whole Mojave. There's probably a few more, but I mean, it's right next to it. It can't be a chance or coincidence. We've got volcanoes there, a weak point in the crust. Piezoelectric discharge could come up out of the broken parts from the volcanoes. It could be also an electromagnetic field variation in the area because of the volcanism there. There's all kinds of possibilities on that. Now, I said I was going to mention Southern California. We had to talk about it. Well, LA Basin is just getting hammered with small earthquakes now. And like I said, everywhere else across the state, the area has increased. So the number of earthquakes has spread out, while the power behind it has remained relatively low. So while we're not dealing with large earthquakes, the size of the area moving has increased. And that includes Southern California. All of Southern California, starting east of LA and going all the way down to Salton Sea on both sides of Salton Sea, east and west. Normally, we're just on the west side of Salton Sea. And that's all 3 sets of main faults down in Southern California. The Elsinore, the San Jacinto. Here we go. Let's go in and show you. Here's the San Jacinto. Here's the Elsinore. And over to the east, of course, we have the San Andreas. But all 3 of them are moving. And they're all moving fairly significantly with small activity. It's a lot of vibrating as the plate is shifting slightly. So over to the east, the San Andreas slightly moving. The San Jacinto, of course, it's moving. And the Elsinore going right down to the coast. It's all moving. And look where it comes in on. Let's just get our little swarm location right here. Corona, California. Which started to swarm a few days back. I want to say like 5 days ago. And I was talking about how I got sent a birthday present from somebody in Corona, California, who sent me all my personal information, like my contact phone numbers and my address, and said, you know, you may want to watch your back. Well, look where the fires broke out here, and look what we have at the location. Oil wells. A lot of them, too. Oil and gas wells across this hillside here, where all your fires broke out. You also have the NEXRAD radar, which is right here, and that's a 750,000 watt microwave powered by a klystron that gives it that 750,000 watts. Now, the oil wells go all the way across the front hillside here, and I don't know exactly how much of this burned, but I know it was a lot. Now, that's just one of the burn spots. The other burn spots were down to the south and up to the north, and they all followed this line right here. Look where our fires are that I had previously marked. Here, here, here. Well, you could add in here, here, and here. And that makes a line of fires in the last 2 months that goes all the way down this and over in east-southeast. Now, the previous fires that I did not mark were right through here at the center. What is this place called? Let's turn on our borders and labels. I don't know my town names out here, guys. Sorry. Palmdale. This Lake Palmdale. The fire that happened there. The lake fire. So we had fire here, and we come down to the south and we had our huge fires down to the south at Yucaipa. The cherry fire. Or was it the apple fire? A line of fires going down this, and a line of fires going down this. What are those? What are those? Look, there is no disputing it. One line of fires going down the San Andreas, another line of fires going along the faults this way, down through the San Jacinto and the Elsinore. And there is no disputing that. The explanation that people gave me was chance or arsonists that know about the faults and are trying to make it look like the faults are burning. Those were the explanations people gave. Chance or someone doing it, trying to make it look like it. The other option, that it's Mother Nature, whoa, that's just not possible. It's not possible for faults to release heat. Says who? You have proof of that? Because I think we have proof right here of the faults releasing heat, which is causing the fires along the faults. Occam's razor, Mother Nature is going to release heat. Does heat fall? Does it go down into the earth? So when something gets hot, it goes down into the earth, right? Or wait, I thought heat rises. Heat rises. It sure does, and it's going to rise up out of the plate when the plate starts to shift. Because guess what this thick red line is here? That's the San Andreas Fault, but it's something else too. The thick red line is the plate boundary. And on the plate boundary, it's a crack that starts at the surface and goes all the way through the plate down to the underside, where the magma is. And guess what forms along plate boundaries? Volcanoes. And that's why you have all your volcanoes over here along the old plate boundary. So, getting back to it, a line of earthquakes spreading out across, or a whole cluster of earthquakes, spreading out east of where, pretty much goes right back to where the fires are, guys. There's one quake up to the north. Let's go pull it. Let me show you where it is. Vincent, California. But again, it's going to bring us in right where one of those fires happened a couple months ago, a month and a half ago, right next to the lake. And I'm not exaggerating. This is right next to the lake. So right next to the lake fire where that lake happened, or where that fire happened at the lake, that's where their new earthquake just came in today. And that's where we go up to. And we spread out from it down to the other fire locations and the oil wells. Then we spread out in a big cluster where the whole area across Southern California is shimmying, shaking, and shifting. So wait, if it's shimmying, shaking, and shifting here, and we can trace it back up in a line across Ridgecrest, where it's also shimmying and shaking, and that points in a line back up to here, where it's shimmying, shaking, and trying to spread, and then that line, you can just quite literally go across California in a diagonal line following the plate shape, which is actually parallel, and it picks back up on the coast. Goes back up to the west-northwest, goes back up to our volcanoes. Then it tries to go back up to the west-northwest even further, where it's blocked, and it stops shifting. That brings us into the supervolcano, where the ring of earthquakes is around it, and that takes us back up to the west-northwest. So I'm just tracing it back for you. Tracing it back up to the volcanoes. So we go back up to Mount Rainier, and our explosion out there, and then going across the plate over to Yellowstone. So recapping the whole thing, a line of earthquakes going across the edge of the craton. Goes over to the east coast. This is 24 hours worth of quakes. Another ring of quakes out on the west coast, bordering on the edge of the deformed craton, going right up to the edge of the craton, going up into Montana and down across through California in diagonal lines, across the accretionary belt, which is the coastal plain basically. Two lines of quakes, one along the coast, one along the border region with Nevada and California, both making the same path though, overall, northwest to southeast, where they both converge down here in Southern California, where all of Southern California starts to shake and shimmy along the most well-known faults. So if this is all shaking and shimmying, shouldn't it break? Shouldn't it? It should. In my estimation, it should. But the last time that we have a big slow slip, tremor slip was, what, a year ago? Maybe a half year ago? Each time these slow slips happen, I look on both sides for movement to take place. Both sides of the area that's slipping. Compensation movement. So if this is the area that's shifting, Southern California should shift, and up here in Canada should shift. Now, we just had a 7.5 earthquake deposited into the system this past week with a tsunami, as well as a new deep earthquake that just struck back out here, right here, today. So a big push coming in on top of this thing being locked and loaded. So if this thing's locked and loaded, and it's not shimmying, shaking, or shifting at all now, and it went from thousands down to 0, then a new push coming in is going to break. It's going to break it. Get a big earthquake out here in the ocean, which will then be followed by a spread of significant activity, not exactly huge, but pretty big, going out across the plate. But it all depends on how big the break is out here in the ocean. Again, this thing's locked and loaded. Either that or they stopped reporting tremors. Those are the options. So 1, they stopped reporting tremors. Just because, for whatever reason. Just, no, not going to see him today. Which means there hasn't been a stop, which means it's not locked and loaded. It's still shifting. That's possible. The other option is that it really did stop shifting, and then in which case it's locked and loaded, and then the next push that's going to come in is going to break it. And the next push is coming in right now. Started with the 7.5. We would expect this thing to break. And where's it going to break? It would break on the north side and the south side. It would be 2 breaks, actually. One on the north side, one on the south side. I would think they'd be about the same size. So let's just put it. Now, this is not a forecast yet, but I'm going to just tell you what magnitudes I'm looking for. I'm going to look for what's going on around the rest of the planet. What's going on the rest of the planet, guys? 5.5 to 5.9, right? So that's what we would look for. 5.5 to 5.9 up here on the north side, right where the Hecate Strait is, Haida Gwaii. And we'd look for a 5.5 to 5.9 to strike down here, Northern California, north of the Bay Area, south of Eureka, somewhere right in between here for that to take place. When those happen, then we watch for a spread to go out from there. And it would be lower than 5.5 to 5.9 around the rest of the plate. That's good, right? So right now, it looks like we're dealing with 5.5 to 5.9 because that's what we're dealing with. It's pretty basic on forecasting, guys. When you see the rest of the planet doing the same size movement, we don't expect to be immune from that in the United States. It just takes the whole week to get to us. Starts over here, goes over towards Europe, starts over here, goes over towards South America. Those are the first to get it. Then it goes up, around, over, and back down in. Now, the only thing that is going to play into this a little bit more is this deep 5.5. But it's moderately deep. It's 233 kilometers deep. I consider anything 200 or more a deep earthquake. So this might be a few points higher, like I said, 5.5 to 5.9. If it goes larger, don't fault me, no pun intended. But I'm trying to keep it within that magnitude. So if there's a deep earthquake at 200, we look for a shallower, larger earthquake, 1 magnitude larger. All right, let's go back to where I started, over here in the West Pacific, with all of our deep earthquakes that have been hammering off, well, pretty constant for the last few weeks, and it's gone up to 6.0 or greater range. So that's all taking place. The deep earthquakes are hammering off. The volcanic activity has kind of leveled off. It's not exactly large. We don't have major volcanic activity taking place. That can be replaced. I don't forecast volcanoes either, but that can be replaced at a moment's notice with these deep earthquakes having a volcanic effect. We've seen that before. So if there's a number of deep earthquakes, you do have to watch the volcanoes next to them for an increase in size of eruption and the number of eruptions. So we can sometimes even see volcanoes that haven't erupted in 1,000 years, 2,000 years, show back up and erupt when there's a big push that comes in from the underside of the plate. We've seen it happen 3 times in the last 5 years that I've been keeping track here on the stream. I've been doing this for 10 years, making videos and so forth, but streaming for roughly 5 years. And in that 5 years, 3 volcanoes, one was 1,000 years old. We were looking for activity to hit nearby, seismically speaking. Deep earthquakes came in down below, and then all of a sudden, Katovar volcano over in Papua New Guinea all of a sudden blows its top after, I want to say it was 1,000 years. 1,000 years being quiet, right here in the middle of the arrow. Another example, Mayotte Island, right here in the middle of this arrow. I mean, it's no coincidence the volcanoes that blew after thousands of years are in the middle of our arrows. I mean, it's not like there's arrows everywhere on the planet, guys. And It hadn't erupted in 2,500 years or so. Deep earthquakes came in over here. The arrow points right to it. Earthquakes came across right to here and then started to strike right here at the volcano. That's when I issued my warnings for the eruption on that volcano, Mayotte Island. People said I was trying to scare the people on the island. I said I didn't even know people lived there. And then it erupted. And the third time it happened was Mount Hakone up here in Japan. Mount Hakone had not erupted in 1,100 or 1,200 years or something. Maybe it was 900 years. But a series of deep earthquakes came down below Japan and then followed up by, and it was a bunch of deep earthquakes. It was like 10 or 15 in a row. And then Mount Hakone just blew up. And it started to steam first. They got the people out of there and issued warnings, and then it sent off a small blast after 1,000 years. That's 3 in the last 5 years that I've been keeping track. So the deep earthquakes do have a shallower, larger earthquake effect and volcanic effect. Do you have an earthquake plan? I ask this at the end of every broadcast, but I really mean it. Do you know what to do when an earthquake strikes? And it's pretty basic, but every video I see, there's people running around screaming earthquake. And just a word to everybody. Everybody already knows an earthquake's happening. You don't have to run around and scream it. Everybody already knows it's happening. The whole building's shaking. Everything's falling. They realize it's an earthquake. So screaming earthquake is just wasting your time. I would take shelter immediately underneath a table or a desk. Now, if you're not confident in the structure that you're in, you do need to have an exit plan. It's going to get you out into a safe area outside. But that means you need to know where to go outside. You have to have a pre-designated area, kind of like a fire drill. An area to go to that's somewhat away from the building or any other hazardous objects that could be falling from an earthquake. And that your friends or your family or your coworkers, you all know to go there. Or know to check for each other there. And also, you should have an emergency kit. The emergency kit is just some basics. You're going to have the change of clothes, the set of shoes, the flashlight, the batteries, the first aid kit. You'll think of things to put in there. I'm just reminding you to do it. Please do it and have the emergency kit by the door that you're planning on going out. That way you can just grab it if you need to. Let me just remind everybody, your emergency kit can double up in floods, fires. Oh, man. Oh, dude. Much love to all my viewers down in Southern California, live in Orange County, and up by the other fire in East LA, because I got contacted by at least 20 different people. It was live in chat over on Twitch. There were people who were currently evacuated in their cars who were viewers of mine on the fires. And I think many of them probably grabbed their emergency kit that has their extra ID, their extra information, and change of clothes, set of shoes. It can come in handy. The extra car keys. When they give you like a 2 to 5 minute warning to get out, and you're running around your house trying to find your purse or your wallet, when you could have already had those basic documents in a bag already, it's valuable time. You could be grabbing something else that really matters to you, like photo albums or family heirlooms or whatever it is that really matters to you. Some people, it'll be their PC or their laptop or something, right? But you will have that time to grab it because you have the documents and the other stuff that you would normally fumble to try to find, even an extra set of car keys or house keys, and have that in the bag. Right? Okay, so it came in handy for a fire evacuation, having your emergency kit. Just reminding you. Now, let's lighten it up just ever so lightly. Everybody watching over on Twitch, everybody watching on YouTube, thank you for supporting my operation. You have made a big difference. Sharing the information, getting it out to the world. And just check out my YouTube channel if you want to see how it's growing. And over on Twitch, man, you want to talk about people who are really into earthquakes. They are sharing information 24/7, whether I'm there or not. We find out about earthquakes sometimes from the people at the locations 10, 15 minutes before it gets reported by the USGS or any other agency. Then, of course, we have other people monitoring the seismographs and the seismos, the real-time readouts of the stations, and we find out minutes before it gets reported. So it helps. It helps to know if you can find out, somebody who's in the area, you can get a hold of them, find out they're okay before it even gets reported to the public. That's over on Twitch, which anybody can watch, by the way. To chat, you have to, of course, be a member, but, anyway. Over on YouTube, you can subscribe and share the information. I'm going to premiere this as a video over on YouTube, and we will watch it back. Okay? Word up. Peace out. Much love.